The girl with the envelope. It was a morning like any other. Tokyo bathed in the golden glow of April sunlight. The streets of Harajuku were bustling, but not overwhelmingly so. A quiet hum of life surrounded me as shopkeepers arranged their wares, and early risers sipped their coffees at corner cafes. I had no destination in mind, just the desire to walk, to let the cool air brush against my face and scatter my thoughts. Then I saw her. She was walking in my direction, heading east while I drifted west. There was nothing extraordinary about her appearance. Her sweater was plain, a soft white with slightly frayed sleeves, and her hair was tousled, as if she hadn't bothered to run a comb through it. In her right hand, she carried a crisp white envelope, its edges sharp and pristine. It looked out of place, as if it belonged to a different world, formal, deliberate, and far too perfect for the easy chaos of her aura. But it wasn't her sweater, her hair, or even the envelope that caught my attention. It was something intangible, something impossible to describe. I knew, in that inexplicable, cosmic way you sometimes just know, that she was the 100% perfect girl for me. Not perfect in the glossy magazine cover sense. Her beauty wasn't obvious, nor was it meant to be. It wasn't about her looks, her clothes, or even her mannerisms. It was a feeling, a pull so strong it felt like gravity itself had bent to guide me toward her. My chest tightened, my breath hitched, and for a moment, I forgot how to move. I kept walking, though, because that's what you do. You don't stop strangers on the street, not in Tokyo, and certainly not to say something as absurd as, "You're the 100% perfect girl for me." But as we drew closer, I couldn't shake the thought. My mind raced through possibilities. What could I say? "Good morning, miss. I know this sounds strange, but I think you're the one I've been looking for my whole life." No, too intense. "Excuse me, could you tell me where the nearest post office is?" No, too random. I didn't have any letters to send. And what if she thought I was a lunatic? What if she didn't feel the same? Worse still, what if she did feel the same, but was already in love with someone else? By the time I thought of a suitable line, the moment had passed. We were only a few feet apart now, close enough for me to see the faint, dark circles under her eyes, the way her fingers gripped the envelope as if it were precious. My heart ached with the weight of everything unsaid. We passed each other in front of a flower shop. The scent of roses lingered in the air, mingling with the faint smell of rain-soaked asphalt. I turned my head slightly, hoping she might look back. She didn't. And just like that, she was gone. Part 2. The Envelope's Shadow. The days that followed were a blur, though her image stayed with me like an unfinished melody. I walked the streets of Harajuku every morning, hoping for another chance, but she never appeared. Each day felt like a loop, a cruel repetition of missed opportunity. Yet the more I thought about her, the less I could recall her face. Her sweater, the envelope, the faint scent of roses, those remained vivid. But her features? They slipped further away with every passing hour, like a dream dissipating in the harsh light of day. By the end of the week, I was questioning everything. What if she wasn't as special as I believed? What if my mind had conjured up the connection? But no matter how I tried to rationalize it, the truth remained. I felt something that day. Something rare. Something I couldn't let go. Then came the discovery. One evening, desperate for answers, I returned to the flower shop. It was a modest place, tucked between a tiny cafe and a bookstore. Its owner, a kind-looking elderly woman, greeted me with a warm smile. "Back again?" she asked, her voice laced with curiosity. "You've been walking by every day." Her observation startled me. "I didn't realize it was that obvious," she chuckled. "People come here for two reasons, flowers or something on their mind. You don't seem like you're here for flowers." I hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "I passed someone here last week, a woman holding a white envelope. Do you remember seeing her?" The old woman's brow furrowed as she thought. "An envelope, you say?" She shook her head slowly. "I'm sorry, but I see so many people. Was she a customer?" "I don't know," I admitted. "She was walking east. She didn't stop." The woman gave me a sympathetic smile. If she didn't stop, then she was just passing through. That's the way of Harajuku. People come and go like cherry blossoms on the wind. I thanked her and left, feeling foolish. What had I expected? A revelation? A clue? As I walked away, the scent of roses lingered in the air, mingling with my frustration. Sex before pause. That night, I sat by my window again, the city's lights twinkling in the distance. My mind returned to the envelope. What could have been inside? A confession of love? A goodbye? A secret so heavy it needed to be sealed away? I imagined her sitting at a small desk, her fingers trembling as she wrote. Perhaps she paused to wipe a tear, or maybe she smiled at the thought of the recipient's reaction. She folded the paper carefully, slid it into the envelope, and sealed it with a sense of finality. And yet, as she walked, she seemed uncertain, as if she hadn't yet decided whether to deliver it. I wrote another story that night. In it, a woman carries a letter she never intends to send. The letter contains her deepest thoughts, thoughts she's too afraid to say out loud. She writes it as a way to unburden herself, but when she reaches the mailbox, she hesitates. She knows that once the letter is sent, there's no turning back, so she carries it with her, a constant reminder of the words she'll never say. When I finished, I sat back and stared at the page. My chest ached with the weight of it. What if that was her story? What if I'd walked past her on the one day she needed someone to notice her? The thought was unbearable. The following weekend, I decided to break free from my pattern. Harajuku wasn't the only place she could be. Tokyo was vast, full of corners and alleys I'd never explored. I told myself I wasn't looking for her, not exactly. But deep down, I knew I was. Part 3. The Letter. Weeks turned into months, and the encounter at the Shibuya crossing haunted me like a dream that lingered just beyond memory. Had it really been her? Or had I conjured the entire thing, my mind playing cruel tricks on me? The flash of white, her braid, that laugh, it had felt real, but reality seemed slippery when it came to her. I returned to the crossing several times after that, hoping for another glimpse. Each time, I told myself it was pointless. Tokyo was too vast, too crowded. The chances of finding her were microscopic, but hope has a way of lingering, even when it shouldn't. A startling connection. One gray afternoon, while wandering through Shimokitazawa's maze of vintage shops, I stumbled into a small bookstore tucked between two cafes. The shop was quiet, its shelves brimming with dusty paperbacks and forgotten hardcovers. It smelled of ink and aged paper, the kind of scent that invites you to linger. As I browsed, my fingers grazed the spine of a book that stopped me cold. It wasn't the title or the author that caught my attention. It was what was tucked inside. A crisp white envelope, sticking out like a secret waiting to be uncovered. I hesitated, my heart pounding. The envelope looked so familiar, its edges sharp and clean. My mind raced back to that April morning, to her walking past me with an envelope just like this one. Could it be? Carefully, I slid the envelope out. It wasn't sealed, but its flap was neatly tucked. My fingers trembled as I opened it and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The handwriting was delicate, almost hesitant, as though each word had been written with great care. The words within. The letter began simply. Dear you, I don't know if you'll ever read this, or if you'll even remember me. We only passed each other once, on a street in Harajuku, but I can't forget the way you looked at me. It wasn't intrusive or overbearing. It was kind, curious, like you wanted to say something but didn't know how. That moment stayed with me. It's strange, isn't it, how one fleeting encounter can weigh on your heart? I didn't stop, and you didn't either, but I've replayed it 1,000 times in my mind. What if you had said something? What if I had? Would it have mattered? Or was it just a passing moment, meant to fade like cherry blossoms on the wind? There's something I didn't tell you, something I was carrying that day, not just the envelope in my hand, but something heavier. A decision I had to make. I was walking to the mailbox to send that letter. Inside were words I'd poured my heart into, words I thought I needed to say to someone I thought I loved. But as I walked, I realized something. That letter wasn't meant for him. It was meant for me. It was my way of letting go, of saying goodbye to a life I no longer wanted. I never mailed it. I turned around, tore it up, and started over. If you're reading this, then maybe fate does have a plan. Maybe the universe isn't as indifferent as I thought. Or maybe it's just coincidence, a small, random moment that means nothing at all. But in case it does mean something, I want you to know this. You changed the way I see the world. You reminded me that connection is possible, even in the smallest, briefest moments. If we ever meet again, I hope I have the courage to say hello. Yours, the girl with the envelope. The twist. I read the letter 3 times before I let myself breathe. My mind raced with questions. Was this really from her? How had it ended up here, in this tiny bookstore? And most importantly, was she still out there, waiting for me as I was waiting for her? The shopkeeper noticed me standing frozen and approached with a curious expression. "Find something interesting?" he asked. I held up the letter, still unable to speak. "Do you know who left this here?" He shook his head. "People leave things in books all the time. Receipts, notes, photos. Sometimes they forget, sometimes it's deliberate. But this one, I don't know." I placed the letter back in the envelope and slid it into my pocket. I wasn't leaving it behind. As I walked out of the bookstore, the weight of her words pressed against me. She had noticed me, just as I had noticed her. She had felt the same pull, the same unspoken connection. And now, I had a clue. A sign that maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't over yet. The suspense. That night, as I sat by my window, I unfolded the letter again. I traced her words with my eyes, imagining her writing them, her hand trembling, her heart racing, just as mine was now. And then I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a faint watermark on the corner of the paper. It wasn't just any stationery. It had a logo, barely visible, a cafe name. It wasn't one I recognized, but it was something, a place to start. I grabbed my coat, the letter still clutched in my hand, and stepped out into the Tokyo night. Part 4. The Cafe. The faint logo on the letter's paper was a revelation, a breadcrumb left by fate. Subtle, almost invisible, but unmistakably there, the name of a small cafe I had never heard of, Blue Leaf Cafe. I searched for it online, heart pounding, and discovered it nestled in a quiet corner of Daikanyama, far from the bustling streets of Harajuku and Shibuya, where I had been looking all this time. The discovery felt like a sign. For months, I had been chasing ghosts, unsure if I would ever find her again. But now, here was something tangible. A place. A direction. The sense of purpose was almost overwhelming. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I lay awake imagining the possibilities. What would I say if I saw her? Would she even remember me? And most importantly, would she want to see me? The journey to Daikanyama. The next morning, I stood outside the cafe. It was unassuming, tucked between a boutique and a small art gallery, its hand-painted sign swinging gently in the breeze. The windows were fogged with warmth, a soft light glowing from within. It had the kind of charm that made you want to step inside and stay a while. A bell jingled softly as I pushed open the door. The scent of fresh coffee, warm pastries, and faint lavender greeted me like a warm embrace. The cafe was small, cozy, and intimate. A handful of patrons were scattered at tables, some engrossed in books, others chatting in low murmurs. The atmosphere was quiet but alive, as if the place itself held stories waiting to be discovered. My eyes scanned the room, my heart racing with every face I passed. But she wasn't there. Disappointment settled over me like a weight. I had been so certain this was the moment, the place where everything would fall into place. But now, as I approached the counter, I felt foolish, like a man chasing shadows. The barista, a young woman with bright eyes and a friendly smile, greeted me. "Good morning. What can I get you?" she asked, her voice warm and welcoming. "Just a coffee," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Then, on impulse, I added, "Actually, can I ask you something?" She raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Sure." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the letter. I unfolded it just enough to reveal the faint watermark of the cafe's logo. "Do you recognize this?" Her eyes widened slightly as she leaned in to examine it. "Oh, I do. That's our stationery. We keep it for customers who want to write something while they're here." "Did you find this?" "Yes," I said, hesitating. "It was left in a book. Do you know who might have written it?" She tilted her head, considering the question. We get a lot of regulars who write letters, but there's one woman who stands out. She's here often, usually sitting by the window. She's always writing something. It could be her." "Do you know her name?" She shook her head apologetically. "No, sorry, but she's here almost every Sunday morning. If you come by then, you might catch her." Sunday. That was tomorrow. My chest tightened with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I thanked the barista, grabbed my coffee, and left the cafe feeling as though the universe had given me one final chance. The longest day. The hours leading up to Sunday stretched endlessly. Every second felt like an eternity. I replayed the letter in my mind, dissecting every word, every emotion. She had written about our encounter in Harajuku, about her regrets, about the unspoken connection between us. And yet, there was so much I didn't know. Why had she written the letter? Why had she left it behind? Did she ever think of me as much as I thought of her? Doubt crept in. What if she didn't remember me? What if she had moved on, her life full and complete without me? Worse still, what if she wasn't the person I had imagined her to be? What if the idea of her, the story I had built around her in my mind, was better than the reality? When Sunday morning finally arrived, I dressed carefully, as if the right shirt or jacket might somehow tip the scales in my favor. I arrived at the cafe early, choosing a seat near the window where I could see everyone who entered. My coffee sat untouched, growing cold as I waited. Minutes turned into an hour. The cafe filled and emptied, faces coming and going like waves on a shoreline. But she didn't appear. Doubt loomed larger with every passing moment. Had the barista been mistaken? Was this yet another dead end? And then the bell jingled. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through Season 1 of our captivating 4-season series. We've explored connections, missed moments, and the power of fate, all set against the backdrop of a beautiful April morning in Harajuku. But this is just the beginning. There's so much more to uncover. Deeper secrets, unexpected twists, heartache, healing, and moments that will leave you breathless. Season 2 promises even more suspense, surprises, and heartfelt revelations as the story unfolds. So, if this season struck a chord with you, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know the part that resonated with you most. We'd love to hear your perspective. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated. Hit that notification bell so you won't miss a single moment of the journey ahead. Trust me, you'll want to be there when the next chapter begins. Thank you for being part of this story. We'll see you in Season 2.